Forget the clang of steel, the roar of the sea, or the shouts of a raiding party. When you truly step back into the world of the Vikings, past the sagas and the legends, you find that the most profound rhythms of their daily lives weren't about conquest at all. They were about something infinitely more quiet, more subtle, yet utterly essential. Welcome back, weary travelers, to Forgotten Rhythms. Today, we're not sailing into battle. Instead, we're peeling back the centuries to uncover the quiet, almost hypnotic world of repetitive cloth folding within a Viking settlement. By the time our journey is complete, I promise you'll find a profound, unexpected peace in the simplest, most consistent tasks of an ancient world. If the whispers of forgotten daily life, the subtle textures of history, and finding tranquility in the past resonate with you, do me a favor and gently tap that subscribe button now. Join our quiet exploration of stories often overlooked. So, settle in, take a deep breath, and let's journey into the heart of a Viking longhouse, where the soft rustle of fabric tells a story all its own. And so, we leave the whispers of the general, the abstract notion of rhythm, and allow ourselves to be drawn into a very specific space. Imagine, if you will, stepping through time, past the neat, manicured lawns of today, past the paved roads and the electric hum, and finding yourself on a wind-swept coast or deep within a forested valley of ancient Scandinavia. Our journey takes us to the very heart of a Viking settlement, a collection of dwellings nestled against the elements, each one a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. Before we even reach the entrance, the longhouse announces its presence. Not with a grand facade or a towering steeple, but with the subtle, earthy signs of life, lived in harmony with the land. Your eyes first scan the landscape, perhaps a rugged coastline battered by the North Sea, or a fertile valley carved by a glacial river. The air, crisp and often cold, carries the scent of salt or pine, mingled with something deeper, more elemental, the unmistakable aroma of wood smoke. This is the first invitation, a warm, beckoning plume curling lazily from a vent in the turf roof. The longhouse itself is a study in natural materials. Its walls are often a blend of timber and turf, sometimes stone, rising like a low organic mound from the earth. The gabled roof, typically covered in thick layers of sod, is often overgrown with grass and wildflowers, perhaps even a hardy patch of heather. In summer, it would blend almost seamlessly with the surrounding landscape, a living structure. In winter, a blanket of snow would soften its edges, turning it into a silent white hump, still exhaling that telltale ribbon of smoke. The timber frame, visible at the gables and along the eaves, would be dark with age and weather, a testament to countless seasons centered. The door, often a sturdy, unadorned plank of wood, might be slightly ajar, or perhaps firmly shut against a biting wind. The only sounds outside, save for the crackling of the fire within, would be the natural world, the sigh of the wind through the eaves, the distant cry of a raven, the gentle lapping of waves if close to the shore, or the rustle of leaves in a nearby copse. There is a sense of immense solidity here, of a dwelling built not just for shelter, but for endurance, a steadfast heart beating within a raw, powerful landscape. As you approach the entrance, a subtle shift in the air occurs. The cold crispness of the outdoors begins to give way to a faint, radiating warmth. The scent of wood smoke intensifies, no longer just a distant promise, but a rich, complex perfume mingled with other aromas that speak of human habitation.
Ow.
You might catch a whiff of roasting meat, or simmering vegetables, or perhaps the musky scent of animals. Kept in a separate byre section of the longer houses, sharing the warmth of the same roof, the ground underfoot might be a packed dirt path, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, leading you directly to that solid wooden door. Pushing open the door, if it isn't already ajar, is like stepping into another world entirely. The sudden transition is profound. The bright, sometimes stark light of the outside world is instantly muted, replaced by a softer, flickering glow. Your eyes, accustomed to the openness, take a moment to adjust to the deeper, warmer twilight within. It is a world of shadows and shifting light painted by the heart of the home, the central hearth. This hearth is not merely a fireplace. It is the very soul of the longhouse. Lies at the geometric and spiritual center of the dwelling, a long, low pit of stones, meticulously maintained. Here a fire burns almost perpetually, an eternal flame in the heart of the home. The smoke, instead of being funneled into a modern chimney, rises freely, drifting upwards to escape through a smoke hole or louver in the roof above. This means that the air within the longhouse, while warm, always carries a gentle haze, a soft, ethereal veil through which the firelight dances and plays upon the wooden beams and turf walls. It is a visual constant, a living, breathing entity at the core of existence. The heat emanating from the hearth is immediate and embracing, banishes the chill of the outside, creating a haven of warmth. This is more than just comfort, it is survival. In the harsh Scandinavian winters, the hearth was the difference between life and death. Around it, life revolved. It was the kitchen, with pots bubbling, meat roasting on spits, and bread baking in the coals. It was the light source, illuminating thefaces of the inhabitants. Casting their shadows long and dramatic against the walls, it was the social hub, where stories were told, decisions made, and weary bodies rested after a day of toil. The crackling and spitting of the burning wood, the occasionalis of sap, the soft hiss of embers as they died down or were stirred to life, formed a constant, soothing soundtrack to daily life, was a rhythm in itself, the heartbeat of the home. As your eyes continue to adjust, the layout of the longhouse begins to reveal itself. Typically, these dwellings were long, rectangular structures, often divided into distinct, yet interconnected areas. Down the length of the house, on either side of the central hearth, run raised platforms. These are not merely benches. They are multifunctional spaces that serve as sleeping areas by night and work surfaces or seating by day. Here, families would spread their bedding, often consisting of straw or animal hides. It's covered with woven blankets and woolen cloaks. During the day, these platforms would be cleared, perhaps only leaving a few cushions or sheepskins, transforming into communal areas for eating, crafting, and socializing. The sheer proximity of bodies, of lives, lived in close quarters, fostered a deep sense of community and interdependence. The walls themselves, though rough and unadorned in the modern sense, possessed their own tactile beauty. The timbers hewn with axes reveal the grain of the wood, each mark telling a story of its creation. The turf and earth walls would have a damp, earthy smell, grounding the structure firmly to the land it arose from. Often, the internal surfaces would be lined with woven hangings or animal skins, providing an extra layer of insulation against the biting cold, and adding splashes of color and texture to the otherwise muted palette of earth and wood. These hangings themselves, examples of skilled textile work, would absorb some of the smoke, creating a rich, aged patina. Let us now delve deeper into the tapestry of sensory details that define this Viking home. The sense of smell, asterisk. This is perhaps the most immediate and profound impression upon entering. The dominant note is always that of wood smoke, a rich, resinous scent that permeates every fiber, every object, every breath. But it's not a harsh, acrid smoke. It's a living, breathing essence, mellowed by the constant burning, infused with the history of countless meals and conversations. Beneath the smoke, you detect the earthy dampness of the packed soil floor and the turf walls. A primal connection to the land. Then come the sense of daily life, the rich aroma of stew simmering in a cauldron over the fire. Perhaps fish or game mingled with the earthy sweetness of root vegetables. There might be the temps of fermenting milk or ale stored in wooden barrels. Animal hides used for bedding, clothing, and floor coverings contribute a musky, leathery note. And of course, the ever-present, subtle scent of human presence, of bodies, hair, of simple linen and wool clothing warmed by the hearth. It's a complex symphony of odors, utterly aliento, our modern, sanitized environments, yet deeply comforting and indicative of a life lived close to the natural world and each other. The sense of sound. The longhouse, while a shelter, is far from silent. The most prominent sound is the constant, companionable crackle and hiss of the fire. It is the steady drumbeat of the home. Around it, a softer chorus emerges, in the low murmur of voices, a mix of ancient Norse, rising and falling in conversation or storytelling. The soft rustle of fabric as someone shifts on a platform or moves from one task to another. The gentle thud of a wooden tool against wood, the rhythmic scrape of a spindle as wool is spun, or the soft rhythmic thrum of a loom, if active. Perhaps the occasional clatter of a pot, the quiet movements of children playing on the floor, or the soft breathing of animals in the byre section. Beyond the walls, the sounds of the natural world intrude, muffled but present. The howl of the wind, the drumming of rain on the turf roof, the distant bark of a dog or the bleating of a sheep. All these sounds weave together, creating a tapestry of daily life, a constant, gentle hum that fills the space and underscores the rhythms of existence. The sense of sight, the visual landscape within the longhouse, is one of dynamic contrasts. The flickering, dancing light of the fire is the primary source of illumination, constantly shifting, painting the interior in shades of orange, red, and deep shadow. The smoke-filled air diffuses this light, softening edges, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. Objects are not sharply defined. Rather, they emerge and recede from the gloom. You would see the dark, rough-hewn timbers of the roof frame, blackened by centuries of smoke. The turf walls, lined perhaps with woven hangings or animal skins, would offer varying textures. The coarse weave of wool, the smooth sheen of tanned leather, the shaggy pile of a sheepskin. Along the platforms, bundles of cloth would be visible, perhaps neatly stacked or in various stages of being worked upon. Tools for spinning, weaving, and sewing would be scattered or carefully stored. Simple wooden chests might hold precious possessions. On pegs along the walls, clothing, cloaks, and bags would hang, their textures and colors muted by the ambient light. There would be no sharp, artificial glare, no sterile white surfaces, but a rich, warm palette of earth tones, dark woods, and the deep, natural dyes of woolen textiles. A direct connection to the ground. Near the fire, the air would be noticeably warmer, almost radiating heat, inviting you to draw closer. Further away towards the walls, a cooler, damper air would prevail, a constant reminder of the external environment. The rough texture of the wooden beams and posts, smoothed in places by countless hands, would feel solid and enduring. If you sat on a platform, the surface might be a plank of wood, perhaps covered by a soft animal hide or a woven mat, offering a welcome respite from the harder floor. The textiles, which are so central to our exploration, would offer a myriad of tactile experiences. The coarse, shaggy warmth of raw wool, the smoother yet still substantial feel of spun and woven cloth, the softness of a well-worn tunic, the supple give of tanned leather. Every surface, every object would have a story for the hands to read, a direct, unfiltered interaction with the materials of their world. Within this vivid sensory environment, daily life unfolded in a constant flow of activity. The longhouse was not merely a dwelling, it was a workshop, a communal kitchen, a sleeping quarter, and a gathering place. Here, every task was essential, every material valued. And among these ceaseless activities, the handling and care of textiles played a surprisingly central role. Women, and often men, would engage in a continuous cycle of preparing fibers, spinning yarn, weaving cloth, cutting and sewing garments, and maintaining the existing fabric goods. Clothes needed mending, blankets needed airing, hides needed processing. The very architecture of the longhouse, with its central hearth and communal platforms, necessitated this constant interaction with textiles. Sleeping arrangements required blankets and hides. The need for warmth meant layers of wool and linen, which were carefully managed and preserved. Belongings were often stored in cloth bags or wrapped in fabric to protect them. The precious nature of each piece of woven cloth, the immense labor involved in its creation, meant that it was never simply discarded. It was mended, repurposed, and respected. This environment, therefore, was not just a backdrop, was an active participant in the story of Viking cloth. It shaped the need for it, the way it was made, and, crucially for our narrative, the meticulous care with which it was repeatedly handled, folded, and stored. It is here in this warm, smoky, bustling heart of the longhouse, surrounded by the textures and aromas of a world long past, we find the true context for our quiet journey. We have set the scene, breathed the air, felt the warmth, and heard the subtle rhythms of this ancient home. Now, with this intimate understanding of their world, we are ready to turn our attention to the materials themselves. The very fibers that formed the fabric of Viking life and the careful, dedicated hands that shaped them. And so, we shift our focus from the broad strokes of the longhouse, its vibrant life, to the intimate world of the fibers themselves, the very essence of Viking cloth, and the patient, skilled hands that coax them into being. Imagine, if you will, tracing the journey of a single strand. From its raw, unassuming beginning to its final, functional form, this journey was not swift, nor was it simple. It was a testament to ingenuity, perseverance, and a deep intuitive understanding of the natural world. The textiles that clothed the Vikings, that warmed their beds, and that even powered their ships, were primarily born from two remarkable sources: the humble sheep and the resilient flax plant. Each brought its own unique challenges and rewards, demanding distinct methods of cultivation, processing, and craftsmanship. And in every step, from the field to the loom, the human hand was paramount, shaping, twisting, and transforming raw nature into essential articles of daily life. Let us begin with the wool, that ubiquitous, warming gift of the sheep. In the Viking Age, sheep were far more than just a source of meat. They were walking, breathing textile factories, providing a continuous supply of the fiber that was utterly crucial for survival in the often harsh northern climates. The hardy, often shaggy breeds of sheep kept by the Vikings, such as the ancestors of modern Gotland or Icelandic sheep, were perfectly adapted to their environment. The journey of wool began, of course, with the shearing. Picture the scene: the arrival of spring or early summer, a time of renewed activity after the long winter. The sheep, heavy with their winter coats, would be gathered. Shearing was often a communal activity, a time for sharing labor and conversation. There were no electric shears, naturally. Instead, skilled hands would wield large iron shears, resembling oversized scissors. It was a delicate dance between human and animal, a balance of firm control and gentle precision. The sheep would be carefully held, often by more than one person, as the wool was shorn away in broad, continuous pieces, aiming for as few breaks in the fleece as possible. The air might be filled with the soft bleating of the sheep, the rhythmic snip of the shears, and the murmur of voices. As each fleece came off, it would be carefully laid out, revealing its unique character, its color, its texture, its variations from different parts of the animal. Once shorn, the fleece was far from ready for spinning. It was a tangle of raw fibers, often containing bits of vegetation, dirt, and the natural lanolin, the protective grease that made the sheep's coat water-resistant. The first task was cleaning. This wasn't a rigorous washing that stripped every trace of lanolin. Rather, it was a practical sorting. The fleece would be laid out and skilled hands would skirt it, removing the coarser, dirtier edges and any heavily soiled sections, such as those from the belly or legs. This initial sorting was crucial, as it determined the quality and suitability of the wool for different projects. Some wool, particularly from the outer layers, might be coarser, perfect for durable outer garments or sailcloth. Finer, softer wool from the inner layers would be reserved for inner garments or more delicate weaves. Next came the teasing and opening of the fibers. Imagine pulling apart clumps of cotton wool. But with much more effort and care, raw wool, often matted and compressed, needed to be gently opened up. This might involve simply pulling it apart by hand or using a simple comb-like tool. The goal was to separate the individual fibers, allowing air to circulate through them, and to remove any remaining large pieces of debris. This step was often done in conjunction with the washing or a gentle rinsing of the wool. Not a harsh scrub, but a carefully controlled wash, perhaps in warm, not boiling water. Using natural lye or simply wood ash to help gently emulsify some of the lanolin, but crucially, not all of it. A certain amount of lanolin was desired, as it kept the wool supple, easier to spin, and retained some of its natural water repellency. The smell off wet wool, earthy and faintly animalic, would have permeated the air around the wash basins. After washing and drying, often spread out in the sun and wind, came one of the most transformative steps: preparing the fibers for spinning, for wool, destined for woolen yarns, that is, softer, fluffier, warmer yarns. And the other card would be drawn across it, gently pulling and aligning the fibers in a more random, crisscross fashion, where the fibers were loosely entangled. It was repetitive work, but rhythmic, creating a soft, cloud-like material perfect for warmth. For worsted yarns, which produce a smoother, stronger, and more lustrous fabric, especially good for outer garments that needed to shed water, the wool underwent a more rigorous process: combing. This involved two large, sturdy combs, often with long, sharp metal teeth. A section of wool would be lashed onto one comb, and the second comb would be used to draw through the fibers repeatedly until all the short, broken, or irregular fibers were removed, and the long, parallel fibers remained. This created a sliver or a top, a smooth, continuous rope of aligned fibers. Combing required strength and skill, the careful handling of sharp tools, and a clear understanding of fiber direction. The distinct sounds of the combs scraping through the wool, and the soft tearing of fibers would have been common in a busy household. With the fibers prepared, whether as soft rollag or smooth sliver, the moment arrived for the magic of spinning. This was perhaps the most iconic image of Viking textile production. The spinner, distaff in hand, dropped spindle twirling.
The distaff.
A sticker staff held the prepared fiber, keeping it idity and preventing tangles. From this, a few fibers would be drawn out, gently twisted and attached to the spindle. The spindle, a weighted stick with a hook at one end, was then set into a continuous spin. Rotating rapidalious, the spinner drafted more fibers from the distaff. The twist inserted by the spinning spindle transformed the loose fibers into a cohesive, strong strand of yarn. This was a deeply meditative process. The rhythm of the spindle, the feel of the fibers elongating and strengthening between the fingers, the gradual accumulation of yarn onto the spindle shaft. It all demanded focus, patience, and a delicate touch. A skilled spinner could produce incredibly fine, even yarn, a testament to years of practice. It was work that could be done almost anywhere, by the hearth, out in the sun, while walking, or during long dark evenings. The soft hum of the spindle, the gentle rustle of the fibers, and the quiet concentration of the spinner were a constant presence in the longhouse. Each rotation of the spindle was a small act of creation, building thread by thread, coil by coil, the very fabric of their world. The finished yarn, once spun, was still its natural color, the creams, browns, grays, and blacks of the sheep. But the Vikings were not strangers to color. The art of dyeing was a specialized skill, often passed down through generations, utilizing the rich palette offered by the natural world. Imagine large cauldrons simmering over the hearth, emitting earthy, sometimes pungent aromas. Roots, barks, leaves, lichens, and even insects were meticulously gathered and prepared. Woad, for example, yielded blues, madder root, rich reds, various lichens and plant parts, a spectrum of yellows, greens, and browns. The yarn, or sometimes the woven cloth, would be carefully immersed in these dye baths, gently stirred, and then allowed to slowly absorb the color. The transformation was often gradual, requiring patience and knowledge of mordants, substances like alum or stale urine that helped the dye adhere permanently to the fibers. The sight of freshly dyed yarn hung to dry, vibrant against the subdued tones of the longhouse, would have been a splash of joyous color in their lives, each hue telling a story of the land and the skill of the dyer. Now let us turn our attention to the other vital fiber, linen, born from the slender flax plant. If wool represented warmth and resilience, linen embodied coolness, strength, and a certain refined elegance. Growing flax was an intensive agricultural endeavor, a seasonal cycle that began with careful sowing in spring and ended with a harvest that demanded precision and timing. The flax plant, with its delicate blue flowers, was not cut like grain. Instead, it was carefully pulled from the ground, roots and all, to preserve the full length of its precious fibers. This was back-breaking work, often done by hand, pulling stalk by stalk. Once harvested, the flax bundles would be laid out to dry. But drying was merely the prelude to the most transformative, and perhaps the most odorous stage of linen production, retting. Retting is a controlled decomposition, where moisture and microorganisms break down the pectin that binds the fibers to the woody core of the plant. There were two primary methods of retting. Retting involves spreading the flax stalks thinly over a grassy field, allowing the morning dew, rain, and sun to work their magic over several weeks. This was a slow process, with the flax needing to be turned regularly to ensure even retting. The air during dew retting would be heavy with the earthy, slightly sweet, yet ultimately pungent smell of decaying plant matter, a smell that, for those familiar with it, spoke of future cloth. Alternatively, water retting involved submerging bundles of flax in ponds, slow-moving streams, or specially dug retting pits. This method was faster, sometimes only taking a few days to a couple of weeks, but it produced an even stronger, more intense odor, the truly distinctive, often unpleasant, smell of retting flax that could be carried on the wind. Yet this smell was also the promise of beautiful, strong linen. The retting had to be stopped at precisely the right moment. Too little and the fibers wouldn't separate, too much, and the fibers themselves would begin to rot. This required an experienced hand, one that could tell by sight, feel, and even smell when the flax was perfectly retted. Once retted and thoroughly dried, the flax stalks were ready for the mechanical stages of fiber extraction. This began with breaking and scutching. Imagine the sound, a rhythmic thudding and scraping. The dried flax stalks, now brittle from retting, would be fed through a flax brake, sturdy wooden device with hinged blades that crushed and broke the woody outer core of the stalks, without damaging the inner fibers. This was physically demanding work, requiring strength and a consistent motion. The wood yards, known as shivs, would fall away. Following the breaking, the flax went to the scutching stage. This involved a scutching knife, a long, flat wooden blade, and a scutching block, which was essentially a vertical wooden board. The flax fibers would be held over the edge of the block, and the scutching knife would be swung down in a repeated, forceful motion, scraping away the remaining shives from the valuable long fibers. This was dusty, noisy work, requiring precision to remove the woody matter without cutting the fibers. The air would be thick with fine dust and the dry, rustling sound of the flax. Gradually, the coarse, straw-like flax was transformed into a shimmering, silken bundle of raw linen fibers. The final preparation stage for spinning linen was hackling. This was akin to the combing of wool, but often more rigorous due to the nature of flax fibers. A series of hackle combs, each with progressively finer and more numerous sharp metal teeth, would be used. The flax fibers would be drawn through these combs, again and again, with increasing delicacy. The coarser, shorter fibers would be caught in the hackle teeth, leaving behind the long, lustrous, parallel fibers of lined flax. This was painstaking work, creating distinct piles of tow and line. The lined flax was the premium material, destined for the finest textiles, while the tow, though coarser, was still valuable for rougher cloths, ropes, or even as stuffing. The hackler's hands would need to be both strong and remarkably agile, pulling the flax through the combs, detangling, and separating, each stroke aligning the fibers into a smooth, flowing stream. Spinning linen, much like spinning wool, utilized the drop spindle, but often with some key differences. Linen fibers are smoother and less elastic than wool, making them a little more challenging to draft and twist evenly. To help with this, the spinner might lightly dampen their fingers, or even the fibers themselves, which helped to smooth the fibers and bind them together. The goal was often to achieve a very fine, strong, and smooth yarn, which when woven would create durable and elegant cloth. The rhythm of the linen spinner was perhaps a little more precise, a little less forgiving, than that of the wool spinner, demanding a consistent tension and a steady hand to prevent breaks and achieve the desired fineness. So, we see two distinct yet equally vital worlds of fiber. Wool, with its inherent warmth, elasticity, and ability to felt, was the quintessential fiber for outer clothing, blankets, sailcloth, materials that needed to withstand harsh weather and hard wear. Its natural lanolin provided water resistance, and its crimp gave it insulating air pockets. Linen, on the other hand, offered a cool, smooth, and strong alternative, ideal for inner garments worn against the skin, for fine linings, or for robust sailcloth where strength and resistance to rot were paramount. It absorbed moisture well, making it comfortable in warmer conditions, and its smooth fibers created a drape and luster distinct from wool. Both fibers, however, shared a common thread: the sheer volume of labor, skill, and time required to transform them from raw material to finished yarn. From the living sheep and the growing flax plant, through the multitude of processes, shearing, washing, carding, retting, breaking, scutching, hackling, and finally spinning, every step was intimately connected to the human hand. These were not anonymous factory processes. They were artisanal crafts, passed down through generations, refined by observation and practice. The warm hands of the Viking people were not merely a poetic phrase. They were the central engine of this entire textile economy. These were hands calloused from field labor, fingers nimble from spinning, palms strong from weaving. These were hands that knew the subtle differences between wool types. The precise moment a flax plant was perfectly retted, the delicate touch needed to draft a fine thread. They were hands that worked communally, sharing the burden of large tasks like shearing or fooling. Where woven cloth was pounded and shrunk to make it denser and warmer, the warmth was literal too. Or perhaps the slight dampness of the processing infused the fibers with the presence of the maker. There was a direct, tangible connection between the hands that prepared the fiber and the clothes that protected the body. Every garment, every blanket, every piece of sailcloth was imbued with this human effort, this patient dedication. This intricate dance of human hands and natural fibers was not just about survival. It was about culture, community, and abiding respect for the resources of their world. The very feel of a finished piece of Viking cloth, whether the comforting scratch of wool or the cool linen against the skin, carried with it the echoes of those tireless hands, the rhythmic sounds off their labor, and the deep, earthy sense of the processes that brought it into being. Having now appreciated the meticulous journey of these fibers, we are ready to understand the next crucial step in their story, the deliberate, purposeful act of folding, which speaks not only to practical need but to the profound value placed on every single thread. Having now appreciated the meticulous journey of these fibers, we are ready to understand the next crucial step in their story, the deliberate, purposeful act of folding, which speaks not only to practical need but to the profound value placed on every single thread. Imagine, if you will, the humble longhouse, the flickering hearth, casting dancing shadows upon the packed earth floor. The air, perhaps, is thick with the scent of wood smoke, simmering stews, and the faint, earthy aroma aftering wool. In this world where every resource was precious and every object crafted with intention, nothing was left to chance, especially not the preservation of one's most valuable possessions. And few possessions held more intrinsic value than cloth. In the Viking Age, cloth was more than mere fabric. It was a tangible representation of immense labor, a testament to the skill of the weaver, the resilience of the spinner, and the bounty of the land itself. It was warmth against the biting northern winds, protection from the elements, a symbol of status, and often a crucial commodity for trade. To waste it, to allow it to be damaged, or even to store it carelessly. This inherent value meant that the way textiles were handled and stored was far from a casual affair. It was, in its own quiet way, an art, a practice of precision and purpose, the art of the fold. We might, in our modern world, consider folding a mundane chore, quick tidying before items are relegated to a drawer or a closet. But for the Viking people, it was an act imbued with far greater significance. Think of the context. There were no vast walk-in closets, no plastic containers, no tumble dryers to fluff out wrinkles. Storage space was at a premium in their longhouses, on their ships, and in their portable chests. Every item had its place, and every effort was made to maximize efficiency and longevity. The fold, therefore, was not merely about neatness. It was a fundamental practice for survival and resource management. One of the most immediate and practical reasons for the precise folding of cloth was, quite simply, space. Longhouses, while communal and bustling, had finite storage. Families lived together, often with their animals, in shared open plant spaces. Belongings were typically kept in wooden chests, often intricately carved and bound with iron, or perhaps on simple shelves and pegs. Within these confines, every inch mattered. Neatly folded tunic or blanket occupied a fraction of the space of a far crumpled, haphazard heap, ensuring that precious items were not lost or damaged in the daily hustle and bustle. Imagine the difference between trying to pack a chaotic pile of garments into a chest and arranging carefully folded rectangles that fit snugly together. It's maximizing every available void. This practical consideration alone would have elevated folding from a simple task to a necessary skill. Beyond space, folding gored essential protection. Textiles, particularly wool and linen, were vulnerable. Moths could infest wool, mice could gnaw through fibers, dampness could lead to mildew, and prolonged exposure to light could cause colors to fade. By carefully folding and stacking textiles, especially within closed chests, a layer of defense was created. The outer layers of a stack would bear the brunt of any potential damage, shielding the more delicate or less frequently used items within. Furthermore, the act of folding reduced the surface area exposed to dust and grime. It wasn't perfect, of course, but it was a deliberate measure to safeguard a valuable asset from the natural depredations of time and environment. The chest itself, often made of robust wood, acted as a primary barrier, and within it, the ordered layers of folded cloth provided an internal sanctuary. Consider the rhythmic process itself. Imagine the weaver, perhaps a woman, having just spent weeks, or even months, at the loom. The rhythmic clack of the beater echoing through the longhouse. Her finished masterpiece, perhaps a robust wool blanket or a fine linen tunic, now lay before her. This was not a piece of fast fashion, easily replaced. This was an objective, monumental effort and intrinsic worth. How, then, would she treat it? With the same care and respect that went into its creation? She would smooth it, perhaps on a clean, flat surface, a wooden table, or even the carefully swept earthen floor. Her hands, calloused and knowing, would guide the fabric, aligning edges with an almost instinctive precision. The first fold, a crisp line down the center, then perhaps another, and another, until the large expanse of cloth was transformed, a neat, compact rectangle. This was not simply about tidiness, it was about honoring the material, acknowledging its journey from raw fiber to finished form. The very nature of the fibers dictated particular folding approaches. Wool, with its natural elasticity and bulk, would have been folded differently than crisp linen. Woolen garments such as tunics, cloaks, and trousers tended to be thicker and held their shape well once folded. A carefully pressed fold in wool would retain its form, creating defined edges that could then be stacked without collapsing. Linen, on the other hand, made from flax fibers, was smoother, less elastic, and prone to sharp creases if folded too tightly or left for too long. While modern clothing care often involves trying to avoid creases in the Viking age, these creases were a natural and expected consequence of storage, often seen as a sign of a well-kept item rather than a flaw. The choice of how to fold, whether tightly or more loosely, would have been influenced by the specific textile and its intended purpose. A delicate, finely woven linen headscarf might be rolled or loosely folded to prevent harsh lines, while a sturdy wool cloak might be folded into a dense, protective block. The act of folding also played a crucial role in transport and trade. The Vikings were renowned travelers and traders, their longships traversing vast distances across seas and rivers. Space on these vessels was severely limited, and cargo needed to be compact, secure, protected from the harsh marine environment. Bolts of cloth carefully folded or rolled would have been a common sight in the holds of their ships. Imagine the meticulous process of preparing these trade goods. Textiles, perhaps dyed with vibrant plant colors, painstakingly woven, then folded into precise uniform packages, ready to be exchanged for silver, furs, or other valuable commodities. A well-presented, neatly folded piece of cloth would also inspire confidence in its quality, a silent testament to the craftsmanship and care of its makers. This principle extended to personal travel as well. A warrior embarking on a raid, or a settler journeying to a new land, would pack their essential garments and blankets, carefully folded to make the most of their limited baggage. The act of folding, in this context, was an integral part of preparing for the journey, a ritual of readiness and anticipation. Beyond these practical considerations, the purposeful fold carried deeper, unspoken meanings rooted in the profound value and respect afforded to these handmade textiles. In a society where mass production was millennia away, every thread represented an investment of time, energy, and skill. To casually crumple or disrespect a piece of cloth would have been akin to disrespecting the very hands that made it and the resources it consumed. The careful act of folding was a daily, tangible demonstration of gratitude and appreciation. It elevated the cloth from a mere utility to an object deserving of deliberate care. Consider the presentation of textiles. Even in a society focused on practicality, there was an aesthetic dimension. A neatly folded blanket laid out on a chest, or a carefully stacked pile of garments awaiting use, would have presented an appearance of order and prosperity within the home. This sense of order, in a world that could often be chaotic and unpredictable, might have provided a subtle sense of calm and control. It was a small but significant way for individuals to exert mastery over their immediate environment, to create bodhi and harmony in their domestic sphere. The visual appeal of such order should not be underestimated. Just as we today appreciate a well-organized space, the Viking people would have found comfort and satisfaction in the neatness of their folded possessions. There's also a possibility, though harder to prove conclusively, that certain folds or ways of presenting textiles might have held symbolic or even ritualistic significance. While we lack direct written evidence detailing precise folding techniques for ceremonial purposes, we know that textiles played a crucial role in spiritual practices, burials, and offerings. Grave goods, for instance, often include textile fragments. The way these textiles were laid out in the grave, whether wrapped around the deceased, placed alongside them, or used as shrouds, would have involved deliberate arrangement. Could specific folds have been used to prepare a textile for an offering to the gods, or for inclusion in a burial mound? The meticulous preparation of precious items for such solemn occasions would certainly suggest a hidden degree of care and precision. Perhaps even specific prescribed methods of folding that we can only guess at today. These folds would transform the mundane into the sacred, preparing the textile for its eternal journey. Let us delve a little deeper into the sensory experience of this art. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself in that longhouse. You hold a recently woven wool blanket, still carrying the faint earthy scent of lanolin and perhaps a whisper of the wood smoke from the hearth. It's warm to the touch, heavy and reassuringly dense. As you begin to fold it, your fingers press into the thick pile, feeling the give and resilience of the fibers. The sound is a soft, muffled whisper as the fabric rustles against itself. Each crease you create is a deliberate act, a minor compression of the material. You smooth out any bumps, ensuring the edges align perfectly. Perhaps you take a moment to admire the pattern of the weave before you conceal it within the folds. Then, imagine a piece of fine linen, perhaps a tunic or a veil. It feels cooler, smoother, almost silken against your skin. As you fold it, the sound is a distinct, crisp rustle, a sharper whisper than the wool. The edges are more definite, the creases sharper, creating precise geometric lines. You can feel the distinct stiffness of the flax fibers as they bend, remembering their previous shape. The process is one of careful arrangement, an almost meditative dance between your hands and the fabric. You might feel the subtle coolness of the linen on your fingertips, or note how the light plays across its surface, highlighting the emerging patterns of the folds. Each fabric, with its unique texture and properties, would have guided the hands that folded it, dictating a slightly different rhythm, a different touch. Consider the sheer scale of some of these textiles. Viking longships were famously equipped with enormous square sails, typically made of wool. These sails were monumental pieces of craftsmanship, requiring vast quantities of wool and countless hours of weaving. When not in use, these sails needed to be furled and stowed away, often on deck, or perhaps even brought ashore for repair and winter storage. The act of furling such a sail was a massive undertaking, requiring multiple individuals to carefully gather, fold, and secure the heavy, often tarred wool. This wasn't a casual crumpling. It was a deliberate, almost architectural feat of folding, ensuring the sail was protected, compact, and ready for deployment when needed. Imagine the coordinated effort, the strain of handling such heavy material, the precise movements required to create a weather-tight, manageable bundle. This truly demonstrates the precision and purpose of folding on an epic scale, driven by the critical need to preserve a piece of equipment vital for travel, trade, and even warfare. While direct archaeological evidence for specific folding techniques is scarce, as textiles rarely survive intact from the Viking Age, we can infer much from the context. We find textile fragments, impressions in graves, and occasionally remarkably preserved garments from bog finds or permafrost. These discoveries often reveal that garments were carefully laid out or wrapped, suggesting deliberate arrangement rather than casual discard. The very act of placing something carefully in a burial, for instance, implies a level of respect and intention that would naturally extend to how that item was prepared, likely involving folding or precise arrangement. Experimental Larco also plays a role. By recreating Viking Age textiles and attempting to store and transport them using period-appropriate methods, modern researchers can gain insights into the practical challenges and solutions. It's often rediscovering the elegance and efficiency of historical folding practices. The methods that emerge are almost always precise, purposeful, and designed for longevity and optimal use of space. The art in the art of the fold, then, was not about creating an ornate, visually complex pattern, but about mastering functional beauty of utility. It was about an intuitive understanding of materials, a respect for craftsmanship, and a deep appreciation for the resources that sustain life. Every fold was a quiet affirmation of value, a small act of preservation, and a testamento, the meticulousness that permeated Viking daily life. It was a practice rooted in necessity, yet elevated by the care and intention bestowed upon it. This precise, purposeful folding wasn't just a chore. It was an integral part of how Viking people interacted with their most precious possessions, binding practicality with a profound sense of respect. And in this repetitive, deliberate act, we begin to glimpse the deeper rhythms that shaped their lives. We've explored how the careful folding of cloth in Viking times was a practical necessity, a testament to the value placed on resources, and an almost intuitive understanding of material science. It was an act of precision, imbued with purpose, transforming a simple piece of fabric into a ready-to-use, well-preserved item. But these were not singular, isolated acts. This precise, purposeful folding was a recurring ritual, woven into the very fabric of daily life, an ongoing rhythm that permeated the Viking home. And in that rhythm, in that steady repetition, something more profound began to emerge. A meditative practice, imagine if you will, the cool, quiet hours after the main chores of the day had settled. The fire in the hearth might still be glowing, casting long, dancing shadows across the packed earth floor and the sturdy timber walls. Perhaps the scent of wood smoke and a recent meal still lingered faintly in the air, mingling with the earthy fragrance of the home itself. Outside, the wind might be a gentle whisper through the eaves, or a fierce, blustery roar, reminding everyone of the wild, untamed world beyond the protective walls. But inside, in the soft glow, there was a different kind of quiet that invited introspection and focused attention. It is in these moments that a woman, or perhaps a man, might have sat down with a stack of freshly laundered garments, or textiles buying prepared for storage or transport. The clothing, perhaps a tunic, a cloak, or a length of woven linen, would have been clean, perhaps still carrying the faint, fresh scent of outdoor drying, or the subtle, comforting aroma of herbs stuck away to deter pests. As the hands reached out, the texture of the cloth itself would have been the first sensation, the resilient, springy strength of wool, perhaps still retaining a whisper of its natural lanolin, or the crisp, almost cool touch of well-spun linen, smooth beneath the fingertips. The act would begin. A gentle smoothing of the fabric, palms pressing out any errant wrinkles, feeling the warp and weft beneath the skin. This initial contact was not rushed. It was a moment of connection, a silent acknowledgement of the effort that had gone into producing this textile. From the sheep grazed on distant pastures, to the long hours of spinning, dyeing, and weaving, each thread, each fiber held a story of labor and resource. And the hands that now prepared it for its next use were simply continuing that story. Then, the first fold. A deliberate movement, aligning edge to edge, ensuring the corners met with quiet precision. The soft, almost inaudible rustle of fabric on fabric would be the only sound, a gentle whisper accompanying the focused movements. The eyes would follow the lines, guiding the hands, ensuring symmetry. The brain, freed from the urgent demands of survival or the complex calculations of trade, could settle into a different kind of awareness, one centered entirely on the tactile and the visual. This was not mindless repetition. On the contrary, it was highly mindful. Each fold demanded attention, a subtle judgment of tension, an awareness of the fabric's unique properties. A thicker wool cloak would respond differently than a fine linen undergarment. The hands, through countless repetitions, would have developed an almost unconscious wisdom, knowing just how much pressure to apply, how to guide the edges without straining the weave, how to achieve that perfectly neat, compact bundle. And as the folds accumulated, one after another, a rhythm would establish itself. It was the rhythm of the breath, perhaps slowing and deepening as the mind became absorbed. It was the rhythm of the hands, moving with practiced ease, a dance learned over years of similar tasks. This rhythm, steady and unbroken, had a profound effect on the inner landscape. It created a quiet space, a sanctuary for the mind. In a world where life was often unpredictable, where the harsh realities of nature and the demands of raiding or trading could bring sudden change and danger, these moments of rhythmic, repetitive activity offered a profound sense of stability and control. The simple act of folding cloth, of bringing order to material possessions, could be a grounding force. It was a small pocket of peace, a personal retreat from the often turbulent external world. For a mind accustomed to vigilance, to planning, to responding to immediate threats, this repetitive task allowed for a different kind of mental engagement. It didn't demand intense problem-solving, but rather a gentle, focused attention. This is precisely the kind of activity that modern neuroscience tells us can induce a meditative state. The brain, no longer distracted by a multitude of stimuli, can settle into a more coherent pattern of activity. Thoughts might still arise, but they would often drift by like clouds across a vast sky, observed rather than clung to. The focus remained on the physical sensations, the feel of the fabric, the movement of the fingers, the steady rhythm of the breath. In this state, the boundaries between the task and the self could begin to dissolve. The person was not merely folding cloth. They were in the act of folding. There was a unity between intention, action, and material. This immersion, this flow state, is a deeply satisfying human experience. It is where we often feel most present, most connected to the moment. Perhaps during these quiet moments, memories might surface. Memories of the journey where this cloak kept them warm, of the feast where this tunic was worn, of the person who spun the yarn or wove the fabric. The act of folding became a quiet contemplation of history, both personal and familial. It was a way of honoring the stories embedded within the threads, acknowledging the hands that had touched them before. Each crease and tuck wasn't just about preparing for future use. It was a gentle caress of the past. Consider the role of this practice in a society that valued tangible wealth. Textiles, as we've discussed, were incredibly valuable. They represented a significant investment of time, labor, and resources. To fold them carefully was not merely a chore. It was an act of guardianship, a stewardship of precious assets. This sense of responsibility, when carried out with repetitive air, could itself be a source of quiet pride and purpose. It was a subtle yet powerful affirmation of one's role in maintaining the household's well-being. The rhythms of repetition and folding cloth were also deeply connected to the larger rhythms of Viking life and the natural world. Life in the north was dictated by seasons, the long dark winters, the frantic energy of spring planting and summer trading, the harvest in autumn. Textile work, from the shearing of sheep to the final folding of garments, was a cyclical process that mirrored these natural rhythms. The long winter evenings were ideal for indoor tasks like spinning, weaving, and the meticulous preparation of clothing. The lighter, warmer months might see clothing used more, needing more frequent washing and, of course, folding. This cyclical existence, where tasks and activities revolved in a predictable pattern, provided a deep sense of order. The repetition of daily and seasonal tasks, from milking the cows to repairing the tools, from preparing meals to folding clothes, created a predictable structure. In a world without clocks as we know them, where time was often marked by the sun, the moon, and the changing seasons, these internal rhythms of repetitive work served as a constant, reassuring pulse. The human body itself is a marvel of repetition. The beating heart, the rhythm of breath, the cycle of sleep and wakefulness. Our ancestors were far more attuned to these natural internal rhythms than many of us are today. The repetitiveness of folding, therefore, could have harmonized with these innate bodily rhythms, creating a sense of profound balance and well-being. It was a way of being present, fully embodied, in the moment. It's important to remember that not all Viking life was about grand voyages or heroic battles.
Oh.
Much of it was lived in the quiet domestic sphere. And within that sphere, these seemingly small, repetitive acts formed the bedrock of daily existence. They were the glue that held the household together, the unspoken language of care and maintenance. This practice of repetitive folding could also have transcended the individual, fostering a sense of community. While some folding might have been a solitary meditative act, much of it would have likely happened in groups. Imagine a gathering of women, perhaps around the hearth, sharing the task of preparing textiles. The quiet rustle of cloth, the gentle movements of many hands, would have created a shared rhythm, a silent understanding. This shared activity could have fostered camaraderie, a sense of belonging without necessarily requiring constant conversation. Sometimes, the most profound connections are forged in shared silence, in the collective performance of a common purposeful task. In such a setting, the younger generations would learn by observation and participation. A child, perhaps sitting nearby, watching the older women's hands move with such grace and precision, would absorb not just the technique of folding, but the underlying values: patience, care, respect for materials, and the importance of contributing to the household. The repetitive act of teaching, guiding young hands, gently correcting, further reinforced the meditative aspect for the teacher, solidifying their own mastery and connecting them to a lineage of knowledge and skill. The satisfaction derived from completing a stack of perfectly folded garments, each one neat and compact, ready for its next purpose, was likely immense. Is a powerful motivator and a source of inner peace. It's the feeling of a job well done, of contributing meaningfully to the well-being of oneself and one's community. Through these countless repetitions, the act of folding evolved from a mere chore into a form of embodied knowledge. The hands knew what to do, even if the mind was momentarily elsewhere. This mastery, achieved through consistent practice, allowed for a deeper level of engagement, a kind of moving meditation where the body performed its task with effortless skill, freeing the mind to wander or simply to rest in the present moment. This isn't to say that every person folding a tunic was consciously seeking enlightenment. Rather, it speaks to the inherent human capacity to find solace and meaning in repetitive, focused work. It highlights how practices born of necessity can, over time, cultivate a deeper sense of presence and inner calm. The Viking people, facing a world that demanded resilience and strength. Think of the quiet satisfaction of knitting, the rhythmic push and pull of the needles creating something new from simple yarn. Feeling the transformation of flour and water into something pliable and alive. Gardening, with its seasonal cycles and repetitive tending. Even modern mindfulness practices often involve repetitive breathing exercises or focused attention on simple, sensory inputs. The underlying human need for order, for rhythm, for focused attention remains constant. In a world saturated with digital noise and constant demands for our attention, there's a growing yearning for activities that allow us to slow down, to engage our hands, and to quiet the mental chatter. The Viking practice of repetitive cloth folding, then, is not just a dusty historical footnote. It's a resonant echo of a timeless human pursuit. The search for tranquility amidst the everyday. The discovery of profound peace in the simplest of tasks. It reminds us that often the path to a calmer mind is found not in seeking grand revelations, but in embracing the gentle, steadfast rhythms of repetition that have always been a part of the human experience. It is a quiet testament to the enduring wisdom found in the steady, intentional work of our hands. Having explored the profound tranquility found in the repetitive folding of cloth, we now turn our gaze to what became of these meticulously prepared textiles. The act of folding was merely one stage in a cycle of creation, care, and utility. Entering a realm of practical storage and perhaps more significantly, symbolic meaning within the heart of Viking society. Imagine, if you will, the interior of a longhouse as evening descends. The family has gathered, the day's labors winding down. Perhaps a mother is carefully stacking a pile of freshly washed and folded linen tunics, their subtle scent, a testament to clean water and sunshine, now infused with the gentle aroma of the peat fire. Into a carved wooden chest that sits at the foot of her family's sleeping platform. These weren't just random piles of fabric. Each fold, each stack, each placement had purpose. Preserving these items was paramount, and the diligent act of folding was the first step in a larger system of careful storage. The primary method of storage for these precious textiles was within chests. Often crafted from robust wood, sometimes reinforced with iron bands or adorned with simple carvings. Beyond chests, we can envision cloth being stored on simple shelves or carefully hung on pegs or racks along the longhouse walls. Heavier items, like cloaks or furs, might have been draped over beams, taking advantage of the rising warmth from the central fire, which would help to keep them dry. The smoke itself, which permeated every corner of the longhouse, actually served as an excellent natural insect repellent and even a mild preservative, helping to protect organic materials like wool and linen from decay. While we might find the constant smell of smoke overwhelming today, for the Vikings, it was simply the scent of home. It's an invisible guardian for their cherished possessions. The particular folding techniques we've discussed, the tight, methodical creasing, were crucial for maximizing space, a perpetual concern in the communal living arrangements of a longhouse. A well-folded garment took up less room, allowing more items to be stored efficiently. But beyond mere practicality, it also minimized wrinkles and helped to maintain the integrity of the fabric itself. Constant creasing in the same spot could weaken fibers over time, but a deliberate fold along the weave or a careful rolling of certain items helped distribute stress and prolong the life of the textile. Consider the value these items held. Wool, the most common textile, required a vast amount of labor to transform from fleece to finished fabric. Shearing, cleaning, carding, spinning, weaving, fulling, dyeing each stage was time-consuming and demanded skill. The sheer investment of human energy in every thread meant that each piece of cloth was a tangible representation of effort, time, and resources. To simply toss a garment aside would have been an unthinkable waste. This brings us to the deeper significance of the folded cloth, stretching far beyond its practical function. These stored textiles were more than just clothing or blankets. They were silent storytellers, emblems of status, symbols of inheritance, and even conduits for belief. Firstly, cloth was a clear indicator of wealth and status. Not all cloth was created equal. While homespun, undyed wool was common, finer weaves, more complex patterns, and especially dyed fabrics signaled a higher standing. Dyes were often expensive and difficult to produce, requiring rare plant materials or even costly imported substances. A vividly colored tunic or a cloak with an intricate border spoke volumes about the wearer's prosperity and connections. Imagine a chieftain's wife opening her chest to reveal a brilliantly colored silk scarf, perhaps obtained through distant trade routes, meticulously folded amongst her other finery. Each piece wasn't just an item of clothing. It was a visible manifestation of power and influence within the community. When these items were stored, they weren't hidden away to be forgotten. They were carefully preserved, ready to be displayed when the occasion demanded, affirming the family's position. Secondly, and perhaps most poignantly, folded cloth often carried the weight of heirloom and inheritance. In a time before written wills were common for most, possessions passed down through families were crucial. Or a ceremonial cloak might be handed down from mother to daughter, father to son, generation after generation. These weren't just functional items. They were imbued with the memories and stories of those who had worn them before. Touching it, unfolding it, preparing it for the next wearer would have been an intimate connection to the past, a tangible link in the chain of family history. The very act of folding such an heirloom was an act of preserving not just the fabric, but the legacy it represented. Consider the stories etched into the very fibers, the saga of a journey, the warmth during a harsh winter, the embrace of a loved one. When a descendant carefully unfolds such an item, they aren't just revealing a piece of fabric. They are unfurling a tapestry of family lore, a silent conversation across centuries. The gentle creases, the subtle wear, the lingering scent of smoke all contribute to a narrative that transcends words, connecting the living to the long-departed. Thirdly, the careful storage of cloth spoke to practicality and preparedness. The Viking year was defined by harsh seasons, voyages, and unexpected events. A family needed a diverse array of textiles: heavy cloaks for winter, lighter tunics for summer, spare garments for travel, and extra cloth for guests or in case of an emergency. The act of folding in ensured that these items were ready when needed. If a sudden journey was announced or an unexpected visitor arrived, a neatly folded, well-preserved garment could be quickly retrieved, demonstrating foresight and hospitality. This meticulous organization was not merely aesthetic, it was a cornerstone of survival and social grace in a demanding world. Beyond the practical, there was also a significant ritual and belief aspect tied to textiles. Cloth played a role in ceremonies, offerings, and particularly in death. Grave goods discovered in Viking burials often include fragments of textiles, or wrapped in special shrouds. They were part of the transition, symbols of respect, and perhaps even intended to serve the individual in the afterlife. Elevating the act of folding from a mundane task to one imbued with sacred meaning when applied to the rites of passage, we also see how folded cloth contributed to personal identity and expression. While modern fashion offers vast individual choice, Viking clothing, while constrained by available materials, still allowed for personal flourishes. A dyer might achieve a particularly desirable shade. They were my tunic, our family's best blanket, the cloak my mother wove. The choices made in their creation and their subsequent preservation reflected a sense of self and family pride, distinct from others. The folded garments in a chest were a collection of individual identities, each piece speaking to the skills of its maker and the personality of its wearer. Finally, the very existence of carefully folded and preserved cloth speaks to the profound communal and economic significance of textiles in Viking society. Textile production was often a collective endeavor, especially spinning and weaving, which brought women together. The finished products could be used for trade, bartering for other goods or services. A well-organized store of cloth represented not just individual wealth, but also a community's productive capacity and its ability to engage with the wider world. The system of production, use, and meticulous storage of cloth was a vital artery in the economic and social lifeblood of the Viking Age. So, when we consider the folded cloth within a Viking home, we are looking at something far more complex than just tidiness. We are seeing the physical manifestation of deeply held values, the importance of wealth, the reverence for ancestry, the wisdom of preparedness, the power of ritual, and the essence of identity, with the future needs of the family and the legacy of the community. In the quiet depths of a wooden chest, or nestled on a simple shelf, these folded textiles waited patiently, holding within their fibers not just warmth and comfort, but the very stories and spirit of a people, ensuring that the fruits of labor were honored, protected, and passed on. Tracing the simple, repetitive motion of folding cloth in a Viking home has led us through forgotten corridors of daily life, revealing layers of meaning far richer than we might have initially imagined. We began with the tactile sensation of wool and linen, the quiet hum of the hearth, and the steady breath of those who painstakingly brought these fibers to life, the almost ritualistic precision of each crease, and the profound economic and cultural significance woven into every thread. Now, as our exploration draws to a close, we are left not with a list of facts, but with a lingering impression, a profound sense of an ancient wisdom that speaks to us across the chasm of 1,000 years, the enduring echoes of tranquility. Consider for a moment the very essence of that tranquility. It wasn't the absence of hardship, for the Viking Age was undeniably a period demanding immense resilience and strength. It was, rather, a tranquility born within the rhythm of labor, a quiet strength found in the intentional engagement with the world. Imagine the hands calloused by work, yet moving with a delicate precision as they smoothed a woven tunic. These were hands that had wielded axes, managed sails, tilled earth, and spun thread. Now they cradled a finished garment, a testament to hours, days, weeks of shared effort. In that moment off-folding, the outside world, with its unpredictable winds and demanding harvests, might have receded, replaced by the immediate, calming reality of fiber and form. This was a tranquility deeply rooted in the reverence for craft and the fruits of labor. Each garment, each blanket, each sailcloth represented an immense investment of time, skill, and communal effort. From the shearing of the sheep or the retting of the flax, through the carding, spinning, dyeing, and weaving, the journey of textile creation was long and arduous. It was a journey of patience, collaboration, and expertise. To then carelessly cast aside such a precious item would have been unthinkable. The act of folding was an acknowledgement, a quiet homage to every step of that journey. It was a way of saying, "This is valuable, this is worthy of care. This represents the very best of our collective endeavor." The smooth press of hand against fabric, the careful alignment of edges, the deliberate tightening of the bundle, each motion reaffirmed the intrinsic worth of the item and the profound respect held for its creation. This deliberate care imbued the act with a sense of dignity, transforming a mundane chore into a quiet celebration of human ingenuity and perseverance. Furthermore, the tranquility arose from the wisdom of preparedness and the order it bestowed. In a world where resources were often scarce and the future uncertain, foresight was not merely a virtue, but a necessity for survival. A well-organized home, with textiles neatly folded and stored, was a testament to a family's ability to plan, to anticipate needs, and to manage their possessions effectively. It reduced chaos, minimized waste, and ensured that what was needed could be found readily. Imagine the relief of reaching into a chest during a sudden winter chill and finding a warm, dry blanket perfectly preserved. This wasn't merely good housekeeping. It was a cornerstone of domestic security. The neat stacks of linen, the carefully rolled furs, the precisely folded cloaks. They were all silent promises of comfort and protection against the vagaries of a harsh climate and an unpredictable world. This deliberate order brought with it a profound sense of inner calm, knowing that one was ready, that one had done their part to secure the well-being of their household. It was a tangible manifestation of a mind at peace with its responsibilities. The repetitive folding also cultivated a deep sense of ritual and mindfulness. While perhaps not explicitly defined as such, the rhythmic, focused nature of the task undoubtedly served as a meditative practice. In a world devoid of digital distractions and constant external stimuli, the quiet moments of Thede held a different quality. The warmth of the hearth, the scent of wood smoke, the soft rustle of cloth. These were the sensory inputs that filled the space. As hands moved, folding garment after garment, the mind could find its own rhythm. It was an opportunity for quiet reflection, for processing the day's events, simply for experiencing the present moment with heightened awareness. Each crease, each smooth, deliberate motion was an anchor to the now. This wasn't a rushed, thoughtless activity. It was an engagement that demanded presence. This kind of mindful engagement, the focused attention on a simple, repetitive task, something we often seek in our modern lives through meditation or other practices. For the Vikings, it was woven into the very fabric of their daily existence, natural consequence of their interaction with their world. This internal stillness, this quiet centering, contributed significantly to the overall sense of tranquility. Beyond the individual, the carefully folded cloth spoke volumes about social connection and economic vitality. Textile production, as we've explored, was often a collective endeavor, particularly among women. Spinning, weaving, dyeing, these were tasks that brought people together, fostering bonds of kinship and community. The resulting textiles were not just personal possessions, but communal assets. A well-maintained store cloth was a visual representation of a community's productivity, its wealth, and its ability to participate in a wider network of exchange. When a piece of cloth was folded, it wasn't merely a private act. It was an act imbued with the echoes of shared labor and future possibilities. Communal warmth, the shared laughter, the quiet conversations that accompanied the creation of these textiles were all symbolically preserved in their careful folding and storage. The tranquility here was a communal one. A shared sense of well-being and interconnectedness reflected in the orderly stacks of their collective output. And perhaps most profoundly, the folded cloth carried the weight of asterisk, legacy, and identity. Asterisk. These were not just anonymous items. They were often heirlooms passed down through generations. The texture of a particular weave, the pattern of a dye, the subtle wear of beloved fabric, these could evoke memories of mothers, grandmothers, and ancestors. To carefully fold a cloak had belonged to a revered elder was to touch history, to connect with the spirit of those who came before. It was an act of preserving not just the object, but the stories, the wisdom, and the very essence of one's lineage. The creases in the fabric held the unspoken narratives of past lives, of journeys undertaken, of children raised, of challenges overcome. In this way, the repetitive folding became a quiet ritual of remembrance. It reinforced a sense of enduring identity, grounding individuals within the long, unbroken chain of their family and their people. This deep connection to ancestry and the continuation of legacy provided a profound sense of peace and belonging, a tranquil anchor in a constantly shifting world. As we reflect on these various facets, the atmosphere of a Viking home, far from being stark and utilitarian, takes on a richer, more nuanced quality. We can almost perceive the quiet industry, the purposeful movements, the steady rhythm of life unfolding. The air might have been thick with the scent of wood smoke, drying herbs, and the earthy aroma of wool. The muted light filtering through the smoke hole or the small window would have illuminated dust motes dancing in the air, catching the subtle gleam of a meticulously folded linen tunic. The only sounds might have been the crackle of the fire, and the gentle whisper of fabric as it yielded to careful hands. In this sensory tableau, the act of folding cloth wasn't just a chore, it was an intimate interaction with the very stuff of their lives, a moment of quiet reverence. The echoes of this tranquility resonated them today. In our own frenetic, hyper-connected world, we often yearn for moments of stillness, for practices that ground us and reconnect us to the tangible. We seek mindfulness, often through structured meditation, or through the deliberate engagement in hobbies that require focus and repetitive motion, like knitting, pottery, or gardening. These are modern echoes of the ancient wisdom embedded in the Viking practice of folding cloth. It reminds us that profound peace can be found not just in grand gestures or exotic journeys, but in the deliberate, intentional handling of the everyday. It speaks to the enduring human need for order, for meaning in our work, and for a connection to something larger than ourselves. The Vikings, through their steady hands and their respect for the materials they worked with, understood instinctively that care begets care, and the legacy of their ancestors. They wove a tapestry of order and meaning, one fold at a time, creating a profound sense of harmony within their homes and within their lives. So, the next time you carefully fold a warm blanket or stack a pile of freshly laundered clothes, take a moment to pause. Feel the texture beneath your fingers. Observe the simple geometry of the fold. Let your mind settle into the rhythm of the motion. In that quiet act, you might just find yourself tapping into a timeless practice, connecting with the echoes of tranquility that have resonated through human history for millennia. You might feel a subtle shift, a quiet grounding, as you participate in a tradition that speaks of value, of purpose, and of the enduring wisdom found in the steady, intentional work of our hands. These are the whispers of 1,000 years, still resonant, still offering solace, still inviting us to find peace in the purposeful simplicity of everyday life. The quiet wisdom of the fold endures, a gentle reminder that even in the seemingly smallest of actions, we can discover profound depth and a lasting sense of calm. It is a legacy woven not just into fabric, but into the very spirit of human endeavor, forever whispering tales, off-care, connection, and the quiet dignity of a well-ordered life. Imagine Astrid, her strong, calloused hands moving with a practiced grace honed by years of quiet dedication. Picture the muted light of a longhouse filtering through the smoke vent, casting soft shadows on the stacked textiles. Feel the smooth, cool linen or the resilient, textured wool as she aligns each edge. Each fold is a tiny prayer, a silent affirmation of order and purpose in a world that often felt vast and unpredictable. The rhythmic whisper of cloth against cloth, the subtle shift as another piece joins the neat pile, creates a symphony of calm. It is in these unhurried moments, in the embrace of such simple, repetitive tasks, that the deepest peace often resides. It is a peace born not of absence, but of presence, a full engagement with the here and now, a mindful connection to the materials, the home, and the silent rhythm of life itself. The legacy Astrid and her kin wove extends far beyond the threads of their looms. It is a living testament to the enduring power of gentle hands, quiet focus, and the profound solace found in the deliberate, repeated acts of care that truly build a home and nourish the soul. And so, the wisdom of the fold, passed down through generations, continues to offer its soothing embrace, inviting us all to discover a tranquil haven within the everyday. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the quiet corners of history. If you found a moment of peace with us today, please consider subscribing to Whisper Vale for more tales designed to calm and captivate. And perhaps find another story to accompany you on your path to rest. Until next time, may your days be filled with quiet wonders and peaceful reflections.